Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Sacred Travel Podcast. And I can't wait to dive into this episode with you about ancient pilgrimage routes, the path to enlightenment. Now, being a devoted pilgrim myself and having been on facilitated trips, but also as solo and self-initiated journeys and also facilitating sacred travel journeys, I just love the multifaceted experience when we embark on a pilgrimage. And today we want to look at what this actually is like. So let's start by the origins. The sense of a pilgrimage was never a linear journey. It was always embarking on a quest, on a rites of passage as an initiation that was usually part of a greater journey. So often it is also called the path of the initiate or the ascension journey. And what I'm saying with that is that every holy space, every temple, every shrine or oracle was part of a greater web of places and temples to undergo basically a lifelong training while these sites were still active. And so bear with me, we will look at one example in more detail in a minute to make you understand what that big picture actually looks like. And I think it will blow your mind because it did when I first heard about it. So from ancient texts, we know that all of the great avatars of humankind, so Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, their entire lineage, but also Babaji and many, many more from basically all religions were exactly on this path. And their traveling to foreign countries and to foreign temples was almost always, or did almost always involve some sort of initiatory purpose. So where do we find these networks of illumination? The most known one is the journey that leads along the Nile of the Egyptian temples that are all placed in very distinct sites to represent the chakras of the Nile, as the chakras of the body system, I'm sorry. And the Nile is the spine. This one is called the Path of the Initiate. And I am going to be recording a complete separate episode on this one, so we are not focusing on that path today. The exact same principle is also mirrored in the Mayan temples in Mexico. It is said that the Egyptian temple structure is more to hold the masculine consciousness, whereas the temples of on the Mayan sides, they hold the feminine consciousness. But same principle, representing the different chakras. And another a little lesser known network of initiatory sites is found in Europe. Fun fact, it does evolve around one of the most well-known pilgrimage routes and also cathedrals around the world. So have a guess. What if I told you that Notre Dame in Paris, Roslyn Chapel in Scotland, and also the Cathedral of Saint James in Portugal, that they are all connected? So for some, it might not come as a super surprise because they are all part of the different routes that is called the Camino de Santiago, which is a great pilgrimage trail to the Cathedral of Saint James in Portugal. But I am sure what you did not know was that even before St. James existed, these paths had been wandered by pilgrims, male and female. And these churches were part of an ancient network of 7 Druidic oracle sites that used to provide initiation rites to people who trained to find the path back to source, to God, to the universe, whatever you want to call it, and to soul enlightenment. And so, did you guess where it is? The symbol of the Camino is the shell, right? The shell is also a symbol for Venus. It is indicating that even before any Christian saint has ever wandered this pilgrimage path, it has been walked and it has been worshipped by our ancestors that venerated the goddess, the sacred feminine, as the source of all life. And now there's absolutely no offense to St. James and also all the beautiful cathedrals and buildings that were built under the Christian domination. But the goddess was there before, just mentioning. And the suggestion is that this pilgrimage route of the Camino de Santiago is a reflection of the Milky Way. Yes, the Milky Way. As the true and also ancient path of spiritual death and rebirth. In many other traditions, such as in ancient Egypt, for example, the Milky Way is also known as the Great Mother. So if you're familiar with it, the goddess Nut, the sky goddess, she is like this great archway in the heavens. And so all of these sites, these 7 Druidic oracle sites that are now 7 Catholic cathedrals, these sites that are below the buildings, so the land, carries a certain energy that is connected to a planet, a soul ray, also chakra points. There's lots of symbology here. And these places have been used for thousands and thousands of years before there was even one stone of a cathedral placed on the earth. So just imagine like how powerful the telluric forces and energy vortices of these places are, like the energy that they hold. And the ancients knew about it. And so most of the people visiting, especially these cathedrals, and the surroundings, they get quite an emotional or also physical reaction. It is, of course, it is also because simply the structures and the architecture is breathtaking, but it is because there is such a potent transformational energy coming out of the earth and connecting you to the cosmos and the greater truth within. And only much later, so the Christian church came and built their cathedrals on top of these oracle sites that had already been used by pagan religion. And now there's 2 sides to this, because partially, of course, we can say that yes, the pagan Druidic way of worship was basically eradicated by the church as this dogmatic structure and like placing their buildings on top and eradicating all of the thoughts and the belief system that had existed that was very, very much connected in with the earth. But at the same time, there's also a lot of suggestions that, especially the sites that we're talking today, especially these cathedrals, were built by Templars or Rosicrucians that had this immense knowledge on sacred geometry, on the telluric energies, and beyond. And so that they came in through the church and deliberately placed these potent nodes, the structures to harness and to preserve the knowledge that would still be passed down in secrecy. So the cathedrals would still serve as both. From the outside, they would perfectly go with the worship of the Catholic Church and their saints. And beneath, like physically, literally beneath, there were many other layers also consciously placed for those who knew how to work with the present energies in a spiritual way. And so there were certain symbols that were mostly placed on the outer temple walls that would indicate that to an apprentice that this was the place that he was looking for, and also that what kind of initiation would await. So in that way, it was really just a beautiful way also to pertain the pagan wisdom and the rites that were the wisdom that was still available, but also needed to go underground in a way. And so if you go visit, you will find a lot of subterranean chambers or crypts under most of these magnificent buildings. And this is usually the place where these rites were performed. Okay, now back to the pilgrimage and the initiation itself. How did this path of enlightenment actually look like? And I would like to show you my screen right now for those looking watching on YouTube, so you have an idea of how this looks like. So what you see is 2 maps of Europe. So what you see is 2 maps of Europe. These depictions are from a book that I will link in the show notes. It's called Roslyn, Guardian of the Secrets of the Holy Grail by Tim Wallace Murphy and Marilyn Hopkins. And so back in the days, this path was this path of initiation was always accompanied and guided by a master, through which the apprentice would ceremonially receive these initiations. And the initiatory pilgrimage would start like the rise in kundalini energy from the bottom and then make its way up north to the top. So you can see here on the map, this is a map showing all the pilgrimage routes, basically the current ones of the Camino de Santiago, and they all go through these cathedrals: Amiens, Paris, Orléans, Chartres, Toulouse, and then also culminating in the Cathedral of Saint James of Compostela. And then if you go to the other one, we can still see Roslyn on top in Scotland. And on this one, it also indicates which site corresponded to which oracle and which planet. So notice again the peculiar number 7, which is a very sacred number and rich in symbolism for many things. So this kundalini energy is also called the rising of the serpent, and the fact that the initiate had to wander to the 7 oracular sites, with the site of Saint James being the first one, indicates that there is not just a process, but also a progress that one makes. And this is a little bit the reversed view when we look at the understanding of how people travel and pilgrimage the Camino today, because it's basically a linear journey that is ending at the cathedral, which is actually also right behind me as a background, of Saint James. In fact, this was not the end, but it was the beginning of the journey. So how would this work? We have seen that the pilgrimage was not just simply one journey encompassing each of these 7 sites, but actually a series of sojourns that needed to be fulfilled in a predetermined order. And the interesting thing is that as we have just learned that St. James was the starting point and not the end, still it is known that each candidate who wanted to be an apprentice had to walk to the initiatory site, so the Cathedral of Saint, or the site of St. James, to show that they had enough stamina, dedication to become an apprentice and an initiate, a novice on the path of enlightenment. So this was the first pilgrimage, the first sojourn on this bigger journey. And then at the Cathedral of St. James, which was dedicated to the moon, the approved apprentice would start there at the moon oracle. And it is symbolizing the root chakra. And there they would undergo an extensive period of training and also mastering the physical human instincts. And awaken, and that's why it starts there, the kundalini energy that is located at the base of the spine. And this one needs to be activated and awakened before then the path travels onward. It's just like the energy in our body as well. Now, what is peculiar about Santiago is the way of the water courses built below the cathedral to imbue actually the structure of the cathedral with powerful energies. And now, of course, it's also no surprise that water is associated with emotions. And which planet is ruling over emotions? The moon. So you will find at each of these places that there is an immensity of layers and symbols. And we cannot go into all of them today, but know that it's there and it's waiting to be discovered when you do some research or you actually want to visit the places yourself. Now, what may sound like a very swift or kind of 1 hour ritual of the initiation could actually be a period of several months, if not even years of probation and learning at that specific site. And then only upon completion, the apprentices would be sent to the next site. But again, it was not uncommon that the initiate would not directly embark on the next pilgrimage journey to continue, but it could very well be that they went back to their community and only started the consecutive journey at a later stage in their life. And this is, for example, very often when we read texts about Yeshua's life. This is what we find. He goes and trains in a temple somewhere and then comes back to the covenant, to his community, before embarking on the next journey. So following the moon oracle is the Mercury oracle. And it might be a little bit confusing for some that the order of these planets are placed with the chakras. This one it's called Notre Dame la Dalbade. It's the white Madonna in Toulouse in France. And it's the second chakra activation of the initiatory path. And that cathedral was built on top of a Roman temple that was dedicated to the Roman god Hermes. And also what I find interesting is that according to ancient scripts, the property that this temple was built on, that cathedral was built on, was owned by the Templars. And so there is really, if you dive deeper, a lot of interweaving, a lot of hints that many of these sites, if not all of them, were somehow built, overseen, guarded by Templars or Rosicrucians, which upheld the lineage of Yeshua and that true gnosis. And another interesting fact is that those of you who have done a little research amongst many religions, you might notice that Hermes and also Mercury, or the Egyptian deity Thoth, they're all the same. And they're not just the winged messenger of the gods, but they are wisdom, truth, and magic incarnate. And what happened at this temple is that the initiate would receive the opening of the sacral chakra and master the creation from within, because this is where our creational force resides. The third one, if we go further up, it's Orléans Cathedral. That was the Venus oracle back in ancient times, and we are still in France. So the third pilgrimage led to the Venus oracle, where it was all about awakening the inner storage house at the solar plexus that is set to hold our prana, the universal life force, and to activate that. And the main teachings the initiate would undergo had to do with overcoming fear-based behavior and not let these steer our actions, rather than come from that creational power in life. And so what, of course, I, as a dedicated Rose Priestess, love is that the dedication to Venus, that place, was also like to her as a morning star, indicates that life is always happening in cycles. And for those of you might know that Venus is making this beautiful rose pattern in the sky, where she is the ultimate representation of death and rebirth, of ascension process and descending process. That can also mirror in our own life the path of reclamation and release. So there's a lot there. The next one would be the Sun Oracle, that is in Chartres, still in France. And this marked kind of a center point, because it's the heart. And the heart is the central chakra, right? Where it's dividing the lower and the upper chakras. And we come into this, the focalization into the center point of the heart. And it was here that it's all about death and self-realization, and really knowing the eternity and the divine nature in the physical body that was activated. And from that path onward, or from that step onward, the initiate could only move on once all judgment was released from the heart. And it was that true compassion and unconditional love that was received. Then the next pilgrimage would lead the apprentice to Notre Dame in Paris. That's probably, one of the most known cathedrals. And if you've been or you've seen pictures, like, it's really that gorgeous Gothic cathedral that represents the Mars oracle. And at this sublime place in Paris, the apprentice would undergo a training of the throat chakra. And I find it a serendipitous combination of Mars representing the willpower and the speech. So it is about knowing how words are literally spells and form your own reality, and distinguishing between the noise and like useless blah 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 that comes out versus using speech and sound to purposefully speak spirit into matter. So that's what happens in Paris, or what happened in Paris. Then if we let the serpent move further on, we come to Amiens, still in France, the last one in France, and it's the Jupiter oracle. Here, the candidate would be initiated into the wisdom of the pituitary gland, which is the third eye. So it's all about the true insight, clairvoyance, and the expansion of consciousness into other realms of like higher dimensions, higher frequency, higher energy. And that was all happening in the crypt of the cathedral. And what is interesting about Amiens is that it is said to hold the relics of John the Baptist. And in the Gnostic teachings, Yeshua and John the Baptist, they were like the ultimate avatars of the polarity. So representing the earthly and the divine. And so it's really interesting. I find that it is in the combination of or the activation with the third eye that we come into this knowing of that also we exist always in polarity. And then the initiate would move to Scotland and to Roslyn Chapel as the final and culminating pilgrimage. And just imagine that, so the people had to leave the mainland and they had to cross the channel to even make it to the other side, to be in a complete, back then almost like other continent. So already the journey, already the pilgrimage to go there was quite an initiatory act in itself. And the chakra which was finally and completely opened here was the crown. And hence it was also the symbol of the crown that each initiate received when completing this final step. And it's a symbol of the inner royalty, a symbol of connecting in to the quest for the Holy Grail. So if we go into the Arthurian legend, there's lots of stories and symbolism that you will find connected to Roslyn, to the Templars, to the crown. And when somebody was ordained with a crown, that was the royal symbol to be and embody king or queen of the Holy Grail, which ultimately the quest for the Grail is the quest to come home to self and realize we are the Grail. We are the Holy Grail. And so the opening of the crown chakra suggests that unification with the divine through the pineal gland, which is ultimately what they say is leading to enlightenment. So if you have ever a chance to visit Roslyn Chapel, I highly, highly recommend it. I've been there in September, and it's truly a place out of this world. Like, it has such a sublime, angelic energy to it, and it's truly, truly worth going, even with the crowds. It's so, it's truly out of this world. So you will definitely understand that this was a church built beyond any Christian belief. And it is even said that the builder, William St. Clair, deliberately created Roslyn as the Omphalos, or also Axis Mundi, of the world, which we also find in other sacred places around the world. So that was the journey of the pilgrimage, the ancient way, how these temples, how these cathedrals were used in former times. And still, if you go visit today, you will find that there is this energy to all of the places of even some sort of like mysticism or secrecy. But I feel that now is really the time where it's the purity and the truth of these teachings and wisdom that wants to come forward and that wants to be brought to light. All right, so I'll stop sharing my screen. I also have a channeling that I would like to read to you. So if you want, you can close your eyes for that. If not, then just, let them remain open. Pilgrimaging is one of the oldest concepts of searching for God, the universe, source, whatever, you name it. The journey of the pilgrim mirrors an outer venture or quest for a greater truth that they often find to be inside. It is the path and the courage to embark on the path that opens us up to a greater truth inside and access deeper wisdom that before might have been hidden or silenced by the noise around us. As much as being on pilgrimage connects with the lineage and ancestors who have walked the same path thousands and thousands of years before, it plugs us into the collective consciousness available along the chosen route. There is a common thread to all pilgrims, the quest for greater knowing of life, an understanding that sometimes only comes when challenges are faced and perspective is switched. That's why there is a paradox as much as a fulfillment in the finding of what one searches by venturing into the unknown and faraway places. Many of the early pilgrimage centers, and thus the routes leading to them, were flourishing cities of wisdom, knowledge, and truth that was not commonly available to the masses. The wisdom anchored into the soil and stones of these places, such as Delphi, the Tor, Stonehenge, Mecca, or Mount Carmel, and many more, hold information that exceeds any personal desire. It's the greater understanding of the tuning of the cosmos, the turning of the cosmos, geometric unfoldments of life as sacred constitution, the glimpse into eternity, and much more. Whether we choose a religious lens or a spiritual lens, what we will find when we go on pilgrimage is greater than ourselves. What you have to understand is that the pilgrimage starts the moment the conscious thought of embarking on a travel experience enters your awareness. It is not the act of going. It starts way before and sometimes takes lifetime to unfold and integrate once you've returned. One advice I want to give you is always keep an open heart and do not get caught up in the idea of a linear journey, for healing and transformation is far from that. Pay attention to signs and clues along the way to be shown the next steps. When triggers occur, embrace them as welcoming opportunity to get to know your own beliefs and constraints better, as how you function as a human. Now that you're always guided and guarded. The way of the pilgrim is blessed with every step by the goddess. Thank you for tuning in. If you have visited any of the places or if you have pilgrimaged the Camino, write me a message. I would really, really want to hear your experience. See you next time.